Okay, this is lesson 1 of unit 1, and we're going to go over some algebra 1 and algebra 2 fundamentals, okay? Couple of vocabulary words, and then we'll do some examples, okay? So, a monomial, firstly, is a constant, variable, or a product of numbers and variables, okay? Some examples, let's give one of each. So we have a constant, or maybe a couple of each. So a constant can be -6, 7, 100. Those are all constants. A variable, obviously, you know, x or y. Could even be x squared. Okay, or a product of numbers and variables. And your constant could even be a fraction. So you could have like 1/2 x to the third. Okay, or there could even be a y there. 1/2 x to the third y. So anything I write on your notes, please write those down. You can highlight if you want. You don't have to. If you want to write more, you can. But everything I write, you should be writing. Okay, so exponent rules. Hopefully you remember these. We have quite a few. A product rule is if you have x to the a times x to the b, you are going to add the exponents, okay? So that would be x to the a plus b. Okay, and let's do an example. So if I have x to the third times x to the 7, that will give me x to the 3 plus 7, x to the 10th. Okay? Think about it as there's 3 in one group, 7 in the other. That makes 10 total. Okay? So the power rule. That's taking a power to a power. So that would be like x to the a raised to the b power. For that, you multiply the exponents. Alright, give me a sec to erase. Multiply the exponent. So that would be x to the a times b. Okay. So an example here, if you have x to the second to the fourth, think about it as 4 groups of x squared, 4 groups of 2 x's. That would give you 2 times 4, 8. X to the 8th. Alright, so I write kind of big on here. I'm going to erase and then move on to quotient rule. If you're lost, you probably will have to rewind. Okay, but I'm on quotient rule right now. So if you have an x to the a and then dividing, so x to the b, with those exponents, you're going to subtract them. Equals x to the a minus b. Okay, but just keep in mind, this has to be the same exact variable. Okay, so I can't simplify an x and a y. They're not like terms. They have to be the same. Alright, let's do an example. Excuse me, 1 second. This is quotient rule, so this should probably be moved up a little bit. Okay, there we go. So you're going to subtract. So if I have x to the 8 over x to the 5th, that would give me x to the 8 minus 5, x to the third. Okay, and in Algebra 2 and Algebra 1, we would have written them all out, canceled common terms, and counted what was left. Okay, you can always do that if you need to, but we're moving on because we're in Precalc. Alright, negative exponent rule is if you have a negative exponent, like x to the negative a, you really make a fraction if it's not there already, and you move it to the bottom and make it positive. Okay, so this would be equivalent to 1 over x to the a. Alright, let's do an example with a different variable. Why not? So if I have p to the negative 2, this is equivalent to 1 over p squared. And again, it's just easier to think about. I'm moving it to the other side of the fraction and making it positive. All right, we don't ever want negative exponents in our final answer. You can simplify that more. All right, and finally, zero exponent rule. Hopefully you remember this. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Okay? Except 0 to the 0 power is undefined. Okay? Anything else raised to the 0 power is 1. Alright, so for example, if you have 4x to the third, and the entire thing is raised to the 0 power, okay, it's still 1. Alright, let's move on to some examples. We're not going to do all of these, so pay attention to the ones I pick out. Okay, and this is what I was saying was very important. Combine like terms. You must have like terms to be able to combine. Okay, so a couple adding and subtracting examples. Let's do the left side for now, and hopefully that will be enough. Okay, so example 1 here. Number 1. Okay, there we go. So we have negative 6 to the 4th times negative 1/4 that whole thing squared. Okay, so these are numbers. That means I could really just put them in the calculator and see what I get. Alright, but negative 6 to the 4th power is going to end up negative 1,296. Okay, and then I still have to multiply by this negative 1/4 squared. Okay, now since the negative is inside your parentheses, a negative times a negative is positive, and that would be 1 over 16. Okay, then in the calculator you just want to put that whole thing in and press equals. That gives me negative 81. Alright, so when you just have numbers, you're really just figuring out what they are and multiplying or doing the operation they give you. Okay, those will simplify the whole way to a number at the end. Alright, number 3. Here we don't have just numbers, we also have variables. Okay, so when you have numbers and variables, you're going to treat them separately. So we're going to take negative 3 times 8 first. That gives me negative 24. And then we're going to deal with the variables. So I have p to the negative 2 times p to the 6. Okay, I'm going to do this out to the side for this first one. That would be p to the negative 2 plus 6. Okay, that is your product rule. They're being multiplied. So that gives me p to the 4th. Okay, so your final answer there is negative 24 p to the 4th. Alright, number 5. Again, we have numbers, so we need to treat the numbers separately, and in this case, the r's separately and the s's separately. So 3 different things to simplify here. Okay, so for my numbers, I have 3/4, and then times, this negative 4 is being squared, and the negative is inside the parentheses, so negative 4 times negative 4 is 16. Okay, then moving on to r's, I have r to the negative 2 times r to the 3. So without having to do that out, that's r to the negative 2 plus 3. That gives me r to the 1st, which is just r. For now, I'll just write r to the 1st so you see that. Okay, but that'll simplify to just r. Then for s's, you have s to the 5th. Excuse me, let me go back and do that again with the r's. My bad. Okay, so the r's here what I did not do, and hopefully you saw, is square it first, okay? So before we do the r's, both together, you still have r to the third squared, okay? So that is now your power rule. So this would be r to the sixth. Okay, so that gives me r to the negative 2 plus 6. Okay, and then let's look at the s's, which I'll make sure that I distribute that squared first. Okay, so that would be s squared. So we have s to the 5 plus 2, because this makes s squared. Okay, and if you wanted to distribute that squared out to everything first and rewrite it as 16r to the 6 s squared, that's a really good idea. I probably should have done that first, and then I wouldn't have done my r's wrong. Okay, so let's simplify this. So 3/4 times 16 is 12, and r to the negative 2 plus 6 is r to the 4th, and s to the 5 plus 2 is s to the 7. That's your final answer. Okay, so for 7, let me redeem myself with this exponent here, and I'm going to go ahead and distribute this squared to everything. Okay, so everything on the top, everything on the bottom is getting squared, and then we will use our quotient rule with our variables. Okay? Okay, so 39 squared, I can't do that in my head, so I'm going to do that on the calculator, is 1,521. C to the 7 times 2 is 14. Think about we're distributing, so you should multiply. D to the 4 times 2 is 8. Okay, now on the denominator, 24 squared is 576. C to the 4th, D to the 10th. Okay, so make sure you distribute that to everything. And then let's start simplifying, okay? So in your calculator, especially if you have a graphing calculator, you should be able to put this in and simplify. Alright, so I will get 169 over 64. Okay, then think about like terms. So we're going to simplify the c's together. C to the 14 over 4 is c to the 14 minus 4. Okay? So c to the 14 minus 4 will give me c to the 10th. And since those aren't negative, it stays on the numerator. Okay? Now let's talk about the d's. D to the 8th over d to the 10th. Okay, so that would be, let me use a different color so you can see. That would be d to the 8 minus 10, which would be d to the negative 2. Okay, so that actually needs to come down on the denominator and become positive, d squared. Okay, and this is your simplified answer for number 7. If you want to try more, you can, but that's all we're going to do for page 1. And when you're done, you can watch the page 2 video.